For our 12.3 on your own, we're going to be working on finding the area of trapezoids. So we want to remember that those trapezoids, we're going to find base 1 and we're going to find base 2. And the first thing we need to do is add those together to make one big parallelogram. So once we have our large parallelogram with the bottom and the top added together, then we multiply that by the height. So base 1 and base 2 times that by the height, then cut it back in half to get back to the trapezoid. So we're using this formula, plugging in our information. So this one here, we have base 1, base 2, and the height. So we need to start by adding 16 plus 8. And then we will times that by 4.5 and then cut that in half. So 16 plus 8 is 24. So now we have 4.5 and we need to times that by 24 and then we'll cut that in half. So 4.5 times 24. So we need to find somewhere on your paper or scratch paper to do this problem. So I'm going to do it right down here. So we have 4.5 times 24 and I will be expecting to see your work with it. So we have 20. 16, 17, 18. We've got our placeholder. 2 times 5 is 10. 8 and 1 is 9. And then we're going to add these together. 0, 8, and then 10. And we have one decimal spot is 108. So now this equals 108. And we have to divide that by 2. So 108 divided by 2, I'm going to let you finish that problem and then make sure it's meters squared. So 108 divided by 2 meters squared. So go ahead and finish up that problem. Hey, at number 11, we have some fractions here. So we're going to add 4 1/4 plus 3 3/4. And then we need to times that by the height of 2.5, and then we'll cut that whole thing in half. So let's start here. So we have 4 and 3 make 7. Here's a fourth, and 3/4 make another whole. So 7 plus 1 is 8. So now we have 2.5, and we're going to times that by 8, and then cut that in half. So we need to make this improper here. So 2.5 times 8. So there's 5. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So we have 5 over 2. And we're timesing that by 8 over 1. Now I can see here we can simplify. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So now we have 4 times 5 is 20 over 1 is just 20. So here we have 20 over 2, but now we need to cut that in half. So I'm going to let you finish that problem and make sure you label it inches squared. So we're adding our bases, timesing the height, cutting it in half, step by step. So you can see 3 steps every time. So add, multiply, divide, add, multiply, divide every time for these trapezoids. Okay, next up we've got this one here. 5 1/6 is the bottom, and we're adding that on to 3 1/3. And we're timesing that by 8. So it's 8 high, and then we'll cut that in half to get back to the trapezoid. So this one we're going to have to do a little bit more work here. So we have 5 1/6, and we're adding on 3 1/3. I notice my denominators are not common. So we need to create common denominators. And I know 3 can go into 6, so they can both turn into 6s. So this one will stay the same. So now we have 3, we're going to turn it into 6. So how do I get from 3 to 6? We times by 2. So I need to do the same thing to the numerator, times that by 2. So here we have 5 plus 3 is 8. 1 and 2 makes 3, 6. Or we can do 8 1/2. So we're at 8 1/2 here. So that was our add. So now we need 8 times 8 1/2. And I can make that a fraction if I want, or a decimal if I want, and we'll divide by 2. So I know that's 8.5. So I'm going to just go 8.5 and I'm going to times that by 8. So 8 times 5 is 40, placeholder. 8 times 8 is 64 plus 4 is 68. And then we have one decimal place, so 68. And so there we have 68. And we need to divide that by 2. So I'm going to let you go ahead and finish that problem. So 68 divided by 2 will be yards squares. I kind of got over into number 13 there, but okay, so add times the height, cut it back in half. Okay, our last one here, we've got our bases are 3.5, and we're going to add that on to 6.5. Then we're times it by the height of 8.4, and then we need to cut the whole thing in half to get back to the trapezoid. So we have 3.5 and 6.5. We're lining up our decimals to add. So here's 10, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, decimal drops straight down. So now we have 8.4 times 10, base times height, and then we'll cut that in half. So we have 8.4 times 10. If you just know this one, awesome. If you know your timesing by 10, what that will do to it, great. Okay, so I know when I times by 0, that's just all going to be 0. So I'm just going to bring a placeholder down. And I'm going to times by 1, bring my decimal down, right? It got 10 times bigger. I just move my decimal back one time to make it 10 times bigger. So now we have 84, and we're dividing by 2. So 84 cut in half is going to be what? Centimeters squared. So every time we add the bases times the height, cut it in half to get back to that trapezoid. Make sure I can see your work on your paper or your scratch paper.